South Africa welcomes and supports the launch of CAADP, the Strategy and Action Plan, and the Kampala Declaration. And we commend the AU Commission for its efforts to ensure that we, as countries, advance the implementation process of Agenda 2063. The launch of this CAADP coincides with sluggish economic growth and geopolitical changes, which necessitate our consideration of how to domesticate and institutionalize the process. We have seen the geopolitical scene being rocked quite substantially with new tariff regimes and countries that are turning increasingly inwards rather than outwards and away from multilateral forums with their joint problem-solving initiatives. So, of course, engaging in global trade is a vital component of national food security. However, excessive reliance on global markets can also render nations vulnerable to disruptions in the international trade and supply chains. And that is why it is so important that as countries in Africa, we look at how we can trade more efficiently and effectively with each other, how we can more efficiently and effectively move agricultural goods and services and inputs around our own continent to ensure that we too are taking care of Africa and using other excess opportunities for trade.
It is exciting that many countries have made commendable progress. Unfortunately, the targets set by the Malabo commitments have not been fully achieved. And that is why we need to take a look at why and how we move forward in this strategy. I therefore take this opportunity to congratulate the African member states for the fortitude shown to make Africa self-reliant in terms of food self-sufficiency. Unfortunately, we are still spending between US 50 billion to 100 billion on importing of food. And the question is why? We have the land, we have the water, we have technical expertise. What more do we need to do? And I think we need to do that introspection. Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, the new CAADP Strategy and Action Plan 2025-2036 marks a significant shift towards agri-food systems transformation. We recognize that agriculture is not just about production, but about creating a holistic system that encompasses production, processing, distribution, up to consumption. It also envisions sustainable and resilient agri-food systems for a healthy and prosperous Africa. Through this strategic document we're about to launch, the continent has been offered a springboard to create greater coherence in the bid to drive nature-positive agricultural production systems that will support ecosystem restoration and biodiversity gain. Currently, Africa is home to 9 of the 10 countries most vulnerable to climate change, and African member states are already diverting up to 9% of their national budgets to respond to climate extremes.
Today's launch is neither an endpoint nor a ceremony. It is the ignition of a decade of acceleration. We will accelerate the full implementation of the AfCFTA to boost intra-African trade, sustain the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, called PIDA, and its catalytic investments, and fast-track the post-Malabo CAADP biennial reviews that sharpen our policy compass. More importantly, strengthen systemic capacity for robust multi-sectoral planning for policy coherence, budgeting, and coordination. We will scale up our support to special economic zones, where $46 million in direct investments is already revitalizing agro-industrial clusters, and expand the African Union Development Agency's Center of Excellence on Climate Change Resilience and Adaptation to safeguard our landscapes and livelihoods. We will unleash the power of our youth and women, builders, not beneficiaries, through the 100 million MSME initiative and the Skills Initiative for Africa, ensuring they gain land, finance, and market linkages to drive rural entrepreneurship. And we will mobilize bold blended financing, aligning public budgets, catalyzing private investments, and deploying innovative instruments to reach our target of $100 billion for agri-food transformation over the next decade.
As African countries, we should have deeper reflection on this. And I'm hopeful that during this launch, we can identify what we need to do differently in order to ensure successful implementation of CAADP 3. As we step in that direction, let me remind you of this major fact. A population that cannot feed itself cannot guarantee its own future. One of the participants has shared very interesting statistics with me this morning. And I would like to share the same with you related to this statement that I've just made. 30% of Africa's children are stunted. And this has reduced the GDP of Africa by 10%. In the same way, 50% of childhood deaths are related to nutrition deficiencies. 3, other forms of malnutrition reduce GDP of countries by as much as 17%. And to me, this is serious. So, a population that cannot feed itself cannot guarantee its own future. Therefore, for Africa to guarantee its own future, we must take deliberate steps to feed ourselves. And we must go beyond feeding ourselves.